Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Developer Dynasty here on our Twitch channel for Wolverine Studios. Very excited to be with you this week as we talk Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball 2022. For everybody who has been tuning in, we've been mostly running Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2022 on our Developer Dynasty streams. If you're interested in Pro Football 22, and you aren't aware yet, First Access has begun on the game. So, First Access is our program where you have the opportunity to pre order, and with your pre order, you get a discount. You get a complimentary Steam key when the game is available on Steam. And of course, most importantly, you get the ability to download and play the latest beta builds. So, if you're looking for some football, get over to WolverineStudios.com. That is the only place you can participate in First Access from. So get over to our website and get your pre-order in and get playing on that today. And with that said, we are going to talk hoops tonight. Really excited to show off some stuff tonight that I've been working on that I think is really going to make a big difference in the game. As I load up my test league here, I want to give a huge thank you, as always, to our followers and our subs. Really appreciate the support that we're getting on the channel here. For all of our basketball fans, you know that a couple weeks back we took a first look at Pro Basketball 22 and we showed off the new UI and we started talking about some of the new features that were going to be coming to the game this year. One of the big ones that we talked about was the all new personality types that we've added into the game. So when we talked last, we had 16 personality types that had been added in. That is up to 23 now. There's going to be 20 more common ones, and then there's going to be 3 really uncommon and unique ones that you'll be able to come across in playing. So that's where the personality type system is right now. You'll notice that each personality type will have a name and a special name, and it's going to have their other personality ratings that correspond to their particular personality type. And some people have asked, is there going to be like a list of all these things? There's going to be some sort of information on them, but I think that I do want there to be a bit of discovery that goes along with this new personality type system. So it's not going to be completely spelled out for the gamers. It's going to be something that that you learn, and you learn how players interact with each other. You learn which personality types have certain tendencies and stuff like that. And I think it's going to be a really interesting and unique system that that really takes the game to a brand new level this year. What we are going to do with that personality type is expand upon that, and I've put something in the staff report now that I'll pull up here, which we've always had the coaching staff report and the the kind of grades per coach, but now I've added a roster relationships section to the screen here, and it's going to let you know which players on the roster that that this player is friendly with. So it's not going to tell you who they're not friendly with or who they get along with, but it's going to let you know, the guys that they consider their friends and they do get along with. And this will help you learn over time which personality types mesh well with each other, and you'll learn from the interactions, the negative interactions, which ones are not meshing well with each other. I see Breeze in the chat and Palm Tree Life. Good evening to you guys. You guys didn't miss anything. We're just getting started, recapping sort of the new personality types before we get into the big new addition, which is a revamp of free agency. So we're going to get that in a second. But the roster relationships, and you'll see why this is important in the free agency section. This will tell you who they have friendly relationships with on this particular team. So again, the information in the player profile will have that personality type, and then you can go to the staff report and find out who they're friends with on the team. And the reason, again, that the people they're not friends with or they don't get along with well on the team is one for kind of a game purpose and discovery purpose throughout the course of the game, but two, there's kind of two levels of people they don't get along with in terms of personality types. One is going to be a constant that these personality types just don't mesh, and then there's going to be another level of personality types that can get along and sometimes they don't get along. So I don't necessarily want to lay out exactly which ones are which for you, because it will influence your decisions and in your player personnel too much, I think, if you know for sure. But it's something that I think over time, the more you play it, the more you'll discover which personality types aren't working well together. At least all of the time. So, anyways, that is the new addition here on the player card. We talked about personality type, the whole kind of concept of it last week. The addition on the staff report screen this week is kind of who they have friends with on the team. So Palm Tree Life asks, does it matter if one player is a star and one player is the 12th man with the personality interactions? The answer is it depends. It depends on what the problem is that the personalities are clashing over. So let's say it's the 12th man, and and he's upset. He would be upset about that he didn't get to play. Well, he would look at the star player and know that he's not as good as that player, and he's probably not going to complain then, even if their personalities don't mesh, because it's not really realistic for the last guy on the bench to complain that LeBron played the whole game even though he doesn't like LeBron. So in that instance, it will matter what their kind of their status is on the team. In the case of it's just in a locker room annoyance, then it won't matter, because they're just whatever hanging out and they get in an argument or a fight or whatever. So it will matter what the circumstance is as to why the negative interaction takes place, but it will depend there. So let's move on to the free agency screen here, because this is where the real bulk of this week's discussion is going to be taking place. So you will see, for anybody who's familiar with the prior screen, that there used to be 4 options down here, and there is a brand new one here that says have meeting. And you will see at the top here where it used to just tell you when free agency ended. It now says that you have 5 meetings left today. So we're adding kind of a recruitment type scenario here to the game, which I think is really going to make a huge difference in how you approach free agency. So each day in free agency, you're going to be able to have 5 meetings with the free agents, and you can choose, obviously any free agents you want to have those meetings with, and you can only meet with a free agent once. So it's not going to be something where you can meet with the same guy every single day. You'll only get 1 meeting with each player. The meetings are going to be a way for you to learn about that player and get a chance to make a pitch to that player, and you will find that information is locked until you have a meeting. So I'm just going to click on Will Johnson here, and I'm going to click make an offer like I would normally. So in the past, it would tell you, what the demand is, what the top team is, what their level of interest in your team is. Now we're going to lock that information until you have a meeting with that player. So this way, you kind of got to use these meetings in order to find out the players that you want. There's still information available to you on a large scale basis. So if we go to the league media screen and into the magazines, there is a free agency guide. So when you click on that, that's going to give you kind of what the media perception is of these players in terms of who their favorite would be and what they're asking for. It's not necessarily going to be completely accurate, though. So the way to get the accurate information will be having a meeting with the player. Breeze asks, is there a cost for a meeting with a free agent? And the answer is no. You just get 5 meetings per day. So in my case, this team is over the cap, so we're not going to be able to do a lot anyways. But I'm just going to bring this up so we can see kind of what takes place during the meeting. So I will click on the Have a Meeting button, and it's going to bring up the meeting screen. Now, once I've brought this up, you can tell here that the demand is shown. It tells you who his favorite team is. It tells you how much interest he has in your team. And now you see questions, and this section down here at the bottom of the pop-up. So the first thing is the questions, and you can ask. Right now there's 5 different questions you can ask the player. You can ask him who he likes on your roster. You can ask him who he dislikes. You can ask what are your chances right now of signing the player. So in that case, that means right now I haven't even made an offer to him. So I can, his interest is only, based on what my team could do, which in this case I'm over the cap, so I can't do much. I can't offer him much. But then there's also the question that you can ask him, okay, if we meet your demands, if we were to offer, if I could, the $32 million starting salary for 5 years, then how would he feel about my team? And then you can also ask, what are the other teams that are in the running for that player, which is information you don't find out from that free agency guide. It just kind of tells you who the top perceived team would be. So this gives you an opportunity to get more information about the player. So I'll ask him if he likes anybody on my roster. He says he doesn't have any friends on my roster, which is not surprising because his personality type is one of the rare ones in the game, which is an outsider. So that means that he basically doesn't have friends. He doesn't, there's nobody he really likes. There's very few players that he really hates. He's just kind of like a loner by himself. That's his personality type. So, in his case, you can see down here what the options are. The one about friends isn't really going to matter to him because he doesn't have friends. He doesn't, especially, overall, but certainly doesn't have any friends on our team. Palm Tree Life asks, does a coach's skills, abilities affect how accurate the info is that you get in the meeting? It doesn't. It's like having a meeting with him and his agent. So, he's going to tell you what his demands are and how he feels about things. The coaches, the head coach at least, as well as your general manager, which is you, your history does have an impact. It's not a huge one, but there is kind of like a bonus if you are like a Pat Riley. You've won a lot of, you've won championships. Or as a coach, he's like Phil Jackson. He's won a lot of games, a lot of championships. So there's a little boost to coming to a team like that, as opposed to, to a team with a new player or a new coach, rather, a young coach, or inexperienced GM. So there is a bonus for having like a really well-respected head coach, and for you to be, a winning GM over time. So you do get a bonus for that, but nothing in terms of how inaccurate the information is. So as you can see, there's 6 boxes down here, and these are 6 different pitches you can make to the player in the meeting. each one of these has a different impact on his potential interest in your team. You can only make a pitch during a meeting, and you can only make one pitch. And if you make a pitch or a promise, however you want to look at it, during this meeting, then it becomes part of any contract you offer him. So you can't promise him one thing in the meeting, and then when you go to make the offer, not follow up on the promise. It's locked in, and this is the only chance you get to do it. You don't have to make a promise to a player. It's just options to inflate his interest in your team. So there's 6 choices. The first one is be the man. You promise that he's going to be your franchise player. You're not going to draft, trade, develop any player who's better than him. So this is going to have the biggest impact on him. It's going to be the most appealing option for a player. The thought of being the star, the man on the team. So you can offer him that promise. There's a promise of a big 3. So you're going to promise that you will have at least 3 4-star players or better while he's under his contract. And he can be one of the big 3. So you don't have to have 3 other stars to add this player. So in the case of him, he is a very highly rated player. So he would be one of the big 3 that we would acquire. And that one has the second largest impact on him. You can also offer this to somebody who would be a role player and tell him, hey, we've got 3 stars, we've got something really good here. You can be part of that. The third option is called be a contender, and you're going to promise that your team will reach the conference finals at least this season. This promise is only a 1-season promise because obviously it would be difficult to promise this into the future. But this one will have the largest penalty if it doesn't happen. Basically, if I promise him that we're going to get to the conference finals or beyond, and we don't make it, he's going to want out. It's going to be a devastating, effect if you can't deliver on that promise. The fourth option is hoop with friends. You're going to keep at least 2 players he gets along with well on the roster. It doesn't have to be 2 specific players, but just 2 of his friends or people he gets along with on the roster. That's why on the player card I started listing who on the roster he would like. Now in this case, this player's personality type is an outsider. He doesn't have any friends on my roster. So if I offered him this, it would be pointless because he doesn't have any friends on the roster. He doesn't want friends with his personality type. So there would be no reason to offer this to him. Next is the building block option, and this is promising that you will have 2 3.5-star better players on the roster, which again he can be one of. It's kind of like a smaller version of the big 3 promise that you're promising that you're building a team, and he's either going to be one of those building blocks, or that that he's going to be a role player on a team that's kind of up and coming. And the last promise is simply on the floor. You promise that he's going to get 30 minutes of playing time on average per game. If for some reason he gets injured or something like that and he can't play and it messes with that up, you won't be penalized for that. But if if there's no extenuating circumstances to why he couldn't play, then you will get a penalty if you promise him that. Let's see, Fire God 699 says that first one is a tough promise. That is, and that is why it has the biggest impact on the player. And these are really meant to be able to swing, a player in terms of his interest. It's not just a cosmetic thing. This, would allow you to, if I promised him that and I could sign him, obviously I don't have the money to sign him, but if I promised that to him that he could be the man, that would jump his interest in my team significantly. Assuming I can meet his other. I mean, I can offer this to him, but his it's not going to make me his top team because I can't pay him. That's obviously the biggest thing, as always. But if it's a team where it's a situation where the money could be close, then adding that promise would, pretty much jump me ahead of everybody else, unless one of the AI teams made that promise to him. Breeze asks if it's possible for a player to change his personality over the time of his career. That's no. I don't. There is a possibility of him kind of softening his negative characteristics, I guess you could say, and kind of mellowing and chilling out, but not in terms of changing what his personality type is. The players are going to have that one particular type for their entire career. And Palm Tree Life, did you guys set up these promises to mesh with the personality types? I guess somewhat, yes. It's not that there's a particular promise that will work better with a personality type, but certain personality types will gravitate more towards, say, playing time demands, or playing for a winner or something like that. So if his personality type is one of the ones that has a higher desire to play for a winner, then offering him, the chance that, you're going to make the conference finals, or that you'll have, a big three, that will mean a lot to that player. If it's a player that, um, doesn't really care about winning, then that will have some impact because it's, still cool to win, but it's not going to be kind of the best thing you could offer him, I guess is the best way to say it. And then Palm Tree Life asks, for example, because he's an outsider, is that a possible reason why he wants to be the man? So that isn't that that doesn't really kind of take place or come into effect. Basically, every player I think would want to be, the franchise, you know, the face of the franchise, and get the the most touches, the most opportunity to put up stats, which will lead to a higher contract opportunities down the line. But again, with all of these promise options, you don't have to make one if you don't want to. Taking the meeting is good so that you can find out, his interest and his top team and the demands, and you can ask him questions. I think this is especially the most helpful part of the meeting, where you could ask him, if we met the demands, where does that put us? And he tells us that New Orleans is still the team that he's interested the most in, and we'd have to go over and above. So, if we had the money in that situation, we could offer him more money if that's not already the max amount of money, or we could offer him, a big promise to see if that could put us over the top. If he's telling us that, hey, if you make an offer and it's, you meet my demands and you'd be, right there, you'd be my top choice, then you would know that there's really no reason for you to make a promise to him, because you don't need the extra ammunition in the deal. So along the lines of the promises, there's notes down here. It says if you choose to make a promise that, like I said, it will become part of any offer you make during free agency. Failure to live up to your promise will have a damaging effect on your relationship with the player, and you do not have to make a promise, but you don't have another chance to do so after the end of this meeting. So how does the promises play out? Some of them are very obvious, like with the be contender option. He's going to be patient and see how the season goes, and if it doesn't go how you're telling him it's going to go, he's going to have one huge negative impact with the relationship with your organization. Some of the other ones are going to be kind of ones that get checked in from time to time. So there's not going to be like, if you promise him that you'll have a big three, you know, it's not like you can start the season with a big three and then trade away one of those guys and think you're in the clear, or go into the season with only, two guys and try to get that third somehow during the season. You're not going to know when the impacts start happening on something like that. It's just going to be like a random check, um, which will be just kind of like a slow decline over time, that he's getting annoyed that you're not living up to this promise. Same thing with, if you told him you'll keep two of his friends on the team. Well, if you get rid of one of them, he might not get mad right away. It might take a couple weeks. It might happen a month later. But whenever, he kind of gets around to saying, hey, you broke your promise, that's when the relationship will start to deteriorate, with this player, which of course leads to, being more disruptive in the locker room. The negative relationship leads to poor play on the floor, as he becomes less and less interested in playing for you, and eventually, of course, demanding to be traded. So the promises are not to be used lightly, because you will have to live up to them. And if you don't, there's going to be, a terrible consequence to your team. So, I'll just offer him the on the floor promise. He says that that's good, that, everyone likes to play. So then when I go to make the offer to him, you'll see that the pitch is locked in here, and it says on the floor. This is not an opportunity to change the pitch that I've made. This is what I promised him in the meeting. So, obviously the best salary I could offer him is, 2.4 and 2.6, the league minimum, for his experience. So he'll not, he's not going to sign with me, even if I offer them that, even with the pitch, because I can't come anywhere close money wise. But that's kind of an overview of how it will work. And of course, those relationships that I talked about, you can find that information always on the player's profile here. He has the 3 different relationships: the coach relationship, the team relationship, and the organization relationship. So if you are not living up to your promises, your organization relationship will suffer greatly. One other thing with the promises is that you can find out if you remind yourself if you've made a promise down here on this contract information tab. If you look at other teams' players, you will not see the promise made information, because it's really irrelevant to you. It's only to the particular team that is dealing with that player. And if a player is traded, or he's cut, or his contract runs out, then the promise ends. So it's not like if another team decided to promise that they would have a big 3 and they didn't, and the guy got mad and they had to trade him, that if you trade for him, that you have to have a big 3. The promise ends once the player is traded. So it's not something that follows the player around. He goes to a new team, it's a new start, and if you acquire him through trade, there is no promises owed to him. So I think that as we look at this, and this will be something that the AI teams can use as well. It's not just something that that you can use yourself. It's something that the AI teams will be able to use against you as well. So in terms of making offers, the AI may use this to win players away that you could possibly win. Palm Tree Life asks, so another team's promise follows the player to your team? No, that's not correct. The promise is end if the player is traded. So the only way you have to deal with a promise to a player is if you made it to him during free agency. Again, if it's something that you'll have a difficult time living up to, then don't do it. Don't make the promises during free agency. You don't need to in order to win players. It's not going to be something that the AI overuses. and I would not suggest it be something that you overuse. It's more of something that is kind of like, you really want that guy and you really are going to, put this extra effort into it. Otherwise, you want to have the meetings so that you can learn about the players, find out who he dislikes on the roster. So in this case, Joe Adams doesn't really dislike anybody on the roster. That doesn't mean he won't have, the dust ups from time to time on the, with players on your roster, but there's nobody that he straight up hates. So it's useful in terms of if you're down to 5 or 7 guys, that you're looking at to fill, a seventh, eighth man role, you want to look and say, okay, does he have a problem with especially your star players or whatever, and if he does, then that guy's not right for your team. Fire got asked, will there be a broadcast of the players demanding a trade if that team doesn't keep the promise? There is news articles from time to time that come up that says, a player is demanding a trade for whatever reason, and certainly, not keeping that promise will be one of those reasons. And one of the ideas behind this kind of idea is to create the sort of thing that's happening more and more in the NBA now, where teams, star players, like an Anthony Davis or something like that, just kind of get fed up with not, with the team not getting anywhere, and then they want to, then they want out. So it's really going to be important for the superstar players in the league, and kind of help with the player movement there and stuff like that. Season Vet asks, will there be any rumors in the news about potential promises made by AI teams, like a rumor of a certain team is looking to make a player, make player A their franchise player? Right now, there's not. I don't think that I'm going to broadcast the promises. I think I like the idea better of you wondering, what did they do to get this guy? Because I think that's more, that could be more realistic. Also in terms of making the promises, you can promise a player that you're going to have a big three without having it too. He may be kind of skeptical and wonder, where's the big three going to come from? But, you might have offers out to other players that you assume will sign with you, or, maybe you have a plan in your mind that you're going to make a trade or something like that. So you can offer that promise, and then if the player accepts, then you might go through with the other trade that you were thinking about, in order to acquire that third star or whatever it is that you need. You promise that he'll have friends on the roster, and then you need to go out and trade for one of his friends or something like that. So you can kind of use these to gain an instant advantage, but you just have to make sure that you follow up and follow through with them, because if you don't, there will be large consequences in terms of your relationship with the player, and which, like I said, will set off a chain of other events, negative events with your team. So that was that was a lot to go over on the Dev Dynasty here tonight. It's the only thing I'm covering tonight here with this, because so much is going into this. It's really kind of revamping a lot of how the whole free agency and player movement system works, which people have been asking for something like this for the last year or two. They enjoy the recruiting so much in college basketball that they wanted something like that, and something to mirror what goes on today, because obviously there is a lot of recruiting that goes on with teams and free agents, nowadays, as they kind of make a visit to each team and hear their pitches and their promises and stuff like that. So that's going to be modeled here in Draft Day Sports Pro Basketball 22. I'm really excited to kind of do more work with it and see how it works out. There's still, still things I'm balancing, still things I'm working on and stuff like that. But, it's just there's such a new array of options with this, that with the personalities and being able to have these meetings and stuff like that, that I really think it makes it kind of all brand new to you as the player going into free agency, and makes free agency much more important rather than just kind of looking through the list and picking a guy and making an offer. Uh, let's see. Before we go, Fire Guy says, I'm thinking human GM could eventually take advantage of this, promise the player something, then sign them for 2 years. So they get the player, then they don't have to keep the promise. I don't know how they wouldn't have to keep the promise, though. The player is going to check in on the promise in most of them throughout points of the season. So if he checks in 4 or 5 times on the promise and you don't have that promise that you're living up to, then each time you're going to get hit. So by the end of the season, he might be done with you. The only one for sure that will check in at the end of the season is the promise about making the conference finals at least, and that promise is only for 1 season. So if you don't, I guess if you sign the player for 1 year, and it doesn't work out, then he wasn't going to stick around anyways or whatever. So that one, but at the same time, the AI can use it too, and the AI will be looking at the same advantages that I think that human players might use, and the AI will be able to use them as well. But again, if you're talking about a star player, he's not going to sign a 1-year contract. He's not going to want a 1-year offer, so it's not really going to work out for him. You might be able to use a promise to get, a 7th or 8th man that the AI wouldn't make the promise on. But I don't think there's going to be a way that the human GMs can use this to their advantage over the AI. In terms of a multiplayer league, I haven't worked out the multiplayer aspect of this yet. I suspect that everything you'll be able to kind of do it like recruiting, if you're familiar with the college game, where you can you send in your whatever recruiting actions you've taken that week. You can send them in for the recruiting actions you're taking, the pitches you're taking, or meetings that you're having each day in free agency. But in a multiplayer league, the other owners could obviously make the promises as well. So we'll see, and it could be a thing where if multiplayer commissioners don't want them to be able to make promises, maybe we could turn it off or something like that. But right now, it's focused only on the solo player side of things with how this will work out. So that's going to do it for this week, this edition of the Dev Dynasty. Super excited about this. I look forward to your feedback. Hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're all over the place there. We'll post this obviously to our YouTube channel as well. And if you have questions or comments, we'll take them there as well. But again, the feedback from everybody is what makes features like this better, and what makes features like this come to pass in the first place. Like I said, this was kind of based off of some asks from people over the last year about expanding free agency and making it kind of more like the college system of recruiting and stuff like that. So it's people who have ideas and have asks and stuff like that they bring them to me, and we put them into action best as we can. So definitely always looking for your feedback and your comments, and I appreciate those. So thanks everybody for coming out to the stream tonight. Thank you for following the channel, and for those who have subscribed to the channel, really appreciate that. And we'll be back next week with another Dev Dynasty here on next Wednesday night. In the meantime, if you're interested in football, don't forget First Access for Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2022 going on right now exclusively at WolverineStudios.com. Get your pre-order and start playing the beta there as we head into the final release of Pro Football 22. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. And we'll be back here next Wednesday at 8 o'clock for more Dev Dynasty from Wolverine Studios.